Welcome back to the channel. I'm here today to talk to y'all about my thoughts on this year's highest grossing film. If not today, then next week. And if not next week, then the week after. What other film am I talking about? Well, I'm talking about Spider-Man Brand New Day, okay? And this film doesn't need an introduction, so we're just gonna go ahead and jump right into the video. Okay, so before we can get into my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day, let's go ahead and do the trailer reel segment where I talk about the trailers that I saw before my viewing of Spider-Man Brand New Day. First up, we have Hunger Games: Sunrise on the Reaping. Okay, so like I saw this trailer in theaters. Well, I saw this trailer on my phone first, like months ago. But the first time I saw this trailer in theaters was like, I can't even remember, but it was like literally at the top of the year, which I love. I love this trailer. Now, if you don't know, I'm a major Hunger Games fan. I literally have the book right here. I have Sunrise on the Reaping right here. I read this book end of last year and also read it at the beginning of this year because I really didn't read it properly at the end of last year. It was like a lazy read. But in January, I had dedicated myself to finishing this book, and I did finish this book. And I love the book. I am very, very excited for the film. And so like, I can't wait. I can't wait till Thanksgiving weekend. We are going to have a blast on the channel when we talk about Sunrise on the Reaping because I finally get to talk about all the Hunger Games films. Oh my gosh. The second trailer that played before Spider-Man Brand New Day was Thomas Crown Affair. Now, this is starring Michael B. Jordan, and obviously the trailer dropped last week, and so I watched it on my phone. And like when I first saw the trailer on my phone, I was like, okay, it's a Michael B. Jordan film, so I wasn't expecting like everything to be perfect. Now, he is coming off of the Sinners run and, you know, getting Best Actor at the Oscars. So it's like, this film is kind of like make it or break it. Like, it's not make it or break it, but it's kind of like, are you really like our movie star or are you not? That's what this film is gonna be. And given that he's like directing the film, I believe, and producing the film and starring in the film, it's like really, really, really like, he's putting his whole essence behind this film. So if the film is not received well, then it's gonna be like a sad day for Michael B. Jordan that weekend, I feel like. Now, when I watched this trailer before Spider-Man Brand New Day, I had a blast, actually. This trailer has like it obviously shot very well, but I think like what about it? It's like the action sequences that they show in the trailer are very exhilarating, and I love that. It kind of gives like very like Tenet. It gives Tenet vibes, and I don't want to say that because I feel like I'm kind of saying that because of like John David Washington of it all, right? But it's giving that. Now, I do love is her name like Audra Arjona? Audra Arjona? Am I saying her name right? Is it Audra Arjona? Like, I don't know. Am I saying her name right? Audra Arjona, that's how you say her name. Yes, I do love her as like, you know, just an actor in general. I did like her in Splitsville last year when I saw that. And so I am excited to see like what the chemistry between Michael B. Jordan and Audra is in this film. And so I will be seated in March when this film comes out. I don't know about you, but Doomsday trailer. Now, I already spoke about the Doomsday trailer in the previous video. Yeah, the Doomsday trailer is there. Now, what I will say is that I saw Spider-Man Brand New Day twice. So I saw it the first time Thursday night, and I saw it the second time Friday night. On Friday day, I took my little cousin to go see it, right? And so Doomsday trailer played again on Friday when I took my little cousin to go see it. And after the Doomsday trailer ended, he was like, "What is that for?" And like, I thought that was so funny because my little cousin, he's in middle school. So I'm like, how old was he when Endgame came out? And I'm like, wow, he really was like a baby when Endgame came out. And I'm like, and I asked him like, you haven't seen Endgame? He's like, no. He's like, I haven't seen that. He's like, I've only watched Spider-Man films for the MCU. And I'm like, oh, okay. Well, there you have it. Okay, the next trailer that played before Spider-Man Brand New Day was The Social Reckoning. Now, the only thing I have to say on this is like, I have nothing to say about this because it's starring Jeremy Allen White and Jeremy Strong and Mickey Madison, who are actors and actresses who I love. Like, I don't want to say love, who I respect, right? And so I don't want to like just go ahead and stamp the film as like being hackish or like being like of low quality or anything like that, which most people are trying to do because of like the clips that we got from it. But I do just want to like be neutral until I see it, because if it's anything like the trailer is, then it's not going to be good. Now, if it's something more than what the trailer is, then it's going to be good. But I also just like don't like the whole like, I don't like that Jeremy Strong's career has like gone this route of like gimmick almost. Like I feel like Jeremy Strong, we like after Succession, we were supposed to go a route of like true actor, and we somehow like come to like gimmick, and I want better for him. So that's like literally my only true thought when I saw this trailer. And the last trailer that played before Spider-Man Brand New Day was the new Jumanji film. Now, I believe I saw the first Jumanji film when it first came out like 10 years ago. I feel like it was 10 years ago. And I don't remember anything about it. I have not watched the other ones. I feel like this new Jumanji film is the fourth Jumanji film, if I'm correct. If it's the fourth or the third, I don't know. But what I will say is that like this trailer has played before every single film I've watched over the past like month, I would say. And it's kind of working on me. Like, I kind of want to go see this film. Like, if I don't have anything to watch that weekend or do that weekend, like on that Saturday, I might like get up and go watch a matinee of this film. Yeah. And so like, TBD on that, because if I do, I will definitely talk about it on the channel and like let y'all know what I think about it. Short thoughts. It's not getting a whole video. I might do we have like a lot of films coming up. So I'm going to have to do like some like, general like overview videos, and I think like I'll slide that into those videos. So that's the end of the trailer reel segment, and let's go ahead and just get right into my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day. Okay, so Spider-Man Brand New Day, directed by Destin Daniel Cretton. He directed Shang-Chi. He also directed Just Mercy and The Glass Castle, etc. It's written by Chris McKenna, Eric Sommers, and obviously Stan Lee. It's produced by Kevin Feige himself, Rachel O'Connor, and Amy Pascal. The cinematography is done by Brett Pollock. The production company is Marvel Studios, Columbia Pictures, Pascal Pictures, and the distribution company is Sony Pictures. Starring Tom Holland, Zendaya, John Bernthal, Mark Ruffalo, Jacob Batalon, Sadie Sink, Florence Pugh, Liza Colon-Zayas, Tremel Tillman, and Marissa Tomei. Spider-Man Brand New Day is a film that I found to be quite wonderful. I think this film reinvigorated my love for the Spider-Man films in general, but also like the MCU in terms of this decade. Before going into this film, I had a very down opinion on where the Tom Holland Spider-Man film stood. I remember seeing Spider-Man Homecoming the week before my 18th birthday and leaving the theater like feeling ecstatic about the storytelling surrounding Peter Parker in particular, not just Spider-Man. And which may have been aided by like, the hype of the MCU at the time. Like, the late 2010s, the MCU was just putting out bangers and bangers and bangers and bangers and bangers. So like you were constantly leaving an MCU film viewing feeling like great. And so that was a part of that phenomena, right? And then even after the height of the MCU's like impact on culture had been reached with Endgame, walking away from Spider-Man Far From Home, I had like solid satisfaction as well. However, when I walked out of Spider-Man No Way Home back in like 2021, all of those core feelings of satisfaction and, happiness dissipated. I'm not high on No Way Home, like in the slightest, honestly. I'm actually very down on No Way Home. I personally feel that Spider-Man No Way Home is the worst Spider-Man film of the Tom Holland franchise. There's just so much in that film that's very like boom, boom, pow, pow. And what I mean when I say boom, boom, pow, pow, I say that when I mean that like the film just really wants the audience to be in awe of like the flashiness of the film instead of being in awe of like the storytelling of the film or being in awe of like the performances of the film or being in awe of like the writing of the film, right? And that's what No Way Home is. It's just a lot of action sequences, a lot of CGI, a lot of magic, a lot of like flashiness. It's a lot of cameos from all these other characters and villains across like the Spider-Man film landscape. You have all the quippiness, all the jokes. You have like the magical ring joke. And then you have like, the ultra nostalgia bait in like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield being in like, an hour and a half of the movie, like basically half of the movie. And that works for a lot of people. However, it just doesn't work for me. I come to films for story and emotionality, right? I think that's like why I love romantic dramas, because like they harp on that like the most. Like that's a genre of film that harps on story and emotionality the most, because like romantic drama, emotionality, it like has to, right? But most films harp on that as well, because like it should pierce you emotionally. Like any story you're watching should touch you emotionally, whether that's like with rage, whether it's with sadness, whether it's happiness, whether that's with, I don't know, anything. And No Way Home is just not that. And that was evident to me from like the moment I sat down, because I had saw the trailers. Obviously, everybody had saw the trailers, and like, you know, it's like end of COVID time, so like everybody was very hyped to be back in the theater, and also be back in the theaters and like be in the communal space of like excitement, right? And so then everybody wanted it to be great, and like I think that's what aided No Way Home in being like, you know, as successful as it was and as loved as it was. However, it wasn't anything outside of what I saw in the trailer. It was just flashiness, and I was like, I wanted more than that. I wanted more. I wanted Peter Parker. I didn't want the Spider-Man story. And I wanted like MJ, and I wanted Ned, and I want Aunt May to be more prominent. I wanted it to be like a true story in that sense. I didn't care about all that other stuff that was there. I didn't care about all the other Spider-Man. I didn't care about Norman Osborn. I didn't care about Doctor Strange. I didn't care about all this other stuff. So the second that spell hit and they cut the Spider-Man piece out, like that spell scene happens, and then it separates the audience from all of that Spider-Man-ness, in my opinion. And I love that. But what I hate about that is like there's only 10 minutes of the film left after that. And so then you have like when, you know, Peter goes to the coffee shop and sees MJ there. Love that scene. You have when Peter's at the tombstone. Love that scene. You have Peter, you know, getting his own place and like making his own suit. Love that sequence. And then like we end off, it's Christmas time. I love Christmas time, and you have the Christmas bells ringing, and you know he's doing this monologue, and like they're leaving us off on this great note about like what becomes of Peter Parker. Honestly, like Spider-Man, we know Spider-Man continues to exist. He's in the city, he's in the snow, he's going from building to building. But what happens to Peter Parker? That was so intriguing to me. And I kind of was like, my expectations going into Brand New Day was kind of very moot, because I was like, I went into No Way Home with a lot of excitement and a lot of hope, and I got nothing back. And I didn't want to like set myself up for failure again with Brand New Day. So going into this film, I was looking for something like alternative to what I got in the last film, essentially. And more so aligned with like Homecoming, or honestly like the Spider-Verse films, which I think do storytelling, like Spider-Man storytelling the best. And that's just what I got. So what are my main touch points and takeaways from Spider-Man Brand New Day? Spider-Man Brand New Day speaks to me on a personal level, and I think that's where my main takeaways from it, or I would say like some of my main takeaways from it stem from, and why I think it's such a great film. My first major takeaway from this film is that it strives to tell a story about willful isolation in your mid-20s. Now, what do I mean by that? A lot of your 20s is about learning who or what your community in life is going to be, right? And whether that be your family or your friends or your pet or your coworkers or your neighbors or your lover or people online or just yourself. One of the things that comes with like such a long lesson, because it takes years in your 20s, it takes like, I would say like for me at least, it was like 23 to 26. Like it takes a few years to learn this lesson in your 20s, in my opinion. And maybe it doesn't happen directly in the smack dab middle of your 20s. Maybe it happens at the beginning of your 20s, or maybe it happens at the end of your 20s, but it's gonna happen in your 20s when you have this lesson. And when you have this lesson, the hardest pill to swallow about this lesson is realizing what of those things that I just listed is not your community, right? And in Brand New Day, Peter is having to experience this exact life lesson, where he has had to abandon the idea of his community being his family, and his community being his friends, and his community being his coworkers, and decide that his community is just solely himself. However, that is like a very hard pill to swallow, as I just said, and as we see in this film for Peter. And as we can see in this film, Peter in the end realizes that his community is, in fact, his friends. However, your friends being your community is hard. And mainly because friendship, whether good and proper or not, is based in pure reciprocation. And so both parties have to be involved 100% in pushing for the relationship to actually occur and thrive and work. And if not, then it just won't work. And which is unlike all other forms of community, in my opinion, given that those forms of community are naturally just less purposeful. What do I mean by that? When your community is your family, there's a biological aspect and a precedent aspect. Biological meaning like we live in a society where if you share blood with people, then you are just mentally trained to be like, those are the people in my life. Those are the people who I'm attached to, who I have to have allegiance to, who I'm going to be with for the rest of my life. But also when it comes to family, it's precedent, because most of the time when your family is your community, you've been with them your whole entire life. So there's just precedent. Like I've already been with them my whole entire life. These are just going to be people who are going to be in my life forever, right? And then like when you have like, you know, your coworkers, it's forced proximity. When your coworkers are your community, it's because like y'all go to work the same day. Y'all spend 8 hours together every single day. It's like school, right? And then like when you have your pet as your community, that's not even like, that's like 100% purposeful, where like there's only one person, one end of that dynamic making choices, because like your pet is basically just your slave. They don't make choices. You bought them, you sat them in your house, they don't get to leave your house, you feed them whenever you want, they give you the love that you want, or else they don't live. Like, it's so like, that's like a whole different other dynamic where it's like, I think that's honestly like extremely purposeful if I'm thinking about it. But like it's a spectrum, and I think like your friends fall in the center of that spectrum, right? Where like it has to be two sides actually working together to make it work. And that reciprocation is seen in this film, where you have Peter and MJ and Ned all decide in No Way Home that their friendship is going to work. They all decide in No Way Home, at the end of No Way Home, when Peter's like, I have to do the spell, they're like, hey, do the spell and come and find us. We are going to reconnect, and we're going to keep this community of friendship going, right? And then Peter chooses not to reciprocate such energy, and then refuses to involve MJ and Ned in his life, and takes his path of isolation, which renders his community, his friends, non-existent, right? And then Peter makes his choice to push for that community again in Brand New Day, and then they reciprocate that energy back, essentially, which is everything that I'm talking about here, where it's like that whole life experience of like learning who your community is and having to deal with like what that comes with is seen and, exhibited through Spider-Man Brand New Day. And that's just so meaningful to me, because that's literally my life experience. Like literally, I had to literally go through that. I had to disassociate myself from the idea that my family was my community, because my family isn't really my community. My friends are my community. My friends are like the people who I love in this world, like the most. And so like, it's just like, they're my people, they're my rocks, they really care about me, and it's like reciprocated. It's 100% reciprocated, and it's two people or three people or four people and five people all deciding that like, we are going to be people in each other's lives, and we are going to make this work for each other. And I just love that about this film. I think it's so relatable, in my opinion. Another major takeaway of mine in this film is that I think that this film is the second, if not the most successful antagonist storyline in the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. Now, if I think like the worst antagonist storyline, I'm just gonna go ahead and go with like Norman Osborn in No Way Home. Like, we're reheating nachos, let's not do that. Didn't like that. And then if we do like the second worst, or like just like the second to last, I would say not worst, successful like antagonist storyline in like the Tom Holland Spider-Man franchise films is going to be Mysterio, Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio. Now, do I think Jake Gyllenhaal as Mysterio was bad? No, I actually liked Mysterio in that film. However, like Far From Home is just like, there's a damper on Far From Home in a lot of aspects, and I think like with Mysterio, all of the Tony Stark comps, like they were cute. I do love the joke in Far From Home where like Mysterio's like, he was behind the curtain at that presentation during Civil War or whatever that was. And like, very meta, I love that, but at the same time, it's like, Mysterio's just missing a little bit more oomph, in my opinion. And then you have like Homecoming, where like you have Michael Keaton as Vulture, who's doing an amazing job. I loved Homecoming, and I loved Homecoming because I felt like Michael Keaton's character was so nuanced and was so interesting to see, because it's like, the villain who is the father of the love interest. Now, that's not like, that's very cliche. That happens a lot. However, like that hadn't really happened in the MCU at the time, because like we didn't get child stories at the time in the MCU, right? I think Peter Parker was like the first child story in the MCU. And so it just was very electric, in my opinion. It was very like, it's Michael Keaton, so obviously we're gonna love that. Now, in this film, in Brand New Day, we have Jean Grey. Jean Grey is introduced in this film, and I think Jean Grey was done spectacularly in this film. The MCU has always had a way of sliding in a very integral character, a very important character, or just a very like impactful character into their premiere films, right? So you have like Hawkeye, he was slid into Thor, and you have Black Widow was slid into Iron Man 2. And you have Nick Fury, who was slid throughout all of Phase 1. And then you have Falcon, who was slid into Winter Soldier. And then you have Wanda and Pietro, who were slipped into Age of Ultron. And then you have Black Panther and Peter Parker, who was slipped into Civil War. And then you have Yelena Belova, who was slipped into Black Widow. And then you have Jean Grey, who was slipped into Brand New Day. And when I say slipped, it's because like all these characters that I just listed became integral characters into the storyline of the MCU. And we already know that Jean Grey is going to be an integral character into the storyline of the MCU. And I feel like they started it off very well. The introduction of Jean Grey in this film is such a baseline foundation for her character, and it allows us to truly grow with Jean Grey, in my opinion, right? Because in this film, like everything is just like very baseline. It's very starting off. It's very like, we're going up the mountain. Like she starts this film obviously with telekinetic powers that she knows how to control. But we don't see her telekinesis until the end of the film, until she has her breakthrough. So I love that, is that like, we don't even know what Jean can do with her telekinesis yet. Like, it leaves a lot up for imagination and for us to experience with her. And then also, you have her sister Sarah here, who, I don't read comic books, so I don't have any understanding of like the storyline between Jean and her sister. And Sarah hasn't been included in any of the film X-Men adaptations, to my opinion. So I really had no context that like Jean even had a sister, but I'm okay with it because I felt like Sarah was executed very well. And I also think like, obviously she hasn't met the X-Men yet. I don't believe she's met the X-Men yet. We don't leave off with any inclination on whether she's met the X-Men yet, but we know that she's going to upstate New York where like, you know, the school is. And so to not like spoil that and to save that for the actual X-Men film, I love that they like brought this like origin story in for Jean, so that like, we can feel something for Jean, but also like not get spoiled or like not waste everything that we want to see in one go, right? And then also you have her powers aren't fully like at their fullest potential in this film at all. Even though we do know that she's very powerful in this film, but we know there's way more to Jean Grey than there is in this film. And that's what I love about it. Like, it really is teasing a lot of things to us in this film. And then you also like, you know, it's teasing her conflict to, you know, society as a mutant. They didn't say mutant in this film, but all the things that go on with Tremel Tillman's character in this film and, you know, the inhibitor storyline and all that stuff is like, it's setting up all of these mutant storylines. So we're going to follow this up in the X-Men film, I believe, which comes out in like 2 years. And so once we get that, maybe not 2 years, like 2029, I think that comes out, maybe 2029, maybe 2028, like 2029 maybe. So whenever we get that, we're going to follow up everything that we see in this film like in that film. I love it. It's a perfect setup. Like when we talk about X-Men in a few years from now, everybody's gonna have to go watch Brand New Day, which I love because I love this film. So now we get to rewatch Brand New Day before X-Men, and it's just it's so good in my opinion. And then like obviously, like I just said, her membership to the X-Men hasn't even been like fleshed out yet. We don't even know how she's gonna come into contact with Charles or with Scott. And then as well as like, and I know a lot of people have critiques in regards to this, but like her powers aren't colored. Like they're very like, you know, non-colored. And so in my opinion, I feel like that's them holding that. I feel like we're going to get another breakthrough from Jean in a future film, and then her powers are going to turn pink or blue. And I hope they do pink. I hope they do pink, but like a subtle pink, like a very baby pink. Don't do blue. I feel like blue's a little too cliche. But I would love for like another breakthrough to happen for her in the X-Men film, and then like her powers, the ones that we saw in this film, like the aura of her, the essence of her powers, turn pink, like in that film to signify to us like she stepped up on another level. Like now we can see the manifestation of her powers. Like, ooh, that would be so good. That would be so good. I think the thing that I love the most about the portrayal of Jean in this film is that she's mean. Jean is mean in this film and she's ruthless, and I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. Because I think like the previous X-Men films kind of like scapegoated how like dangerous the X-Men are. Like I know they use Rogue a lot and Mystique a lot for that, but like Mystique's not really an X-Men, like even though they try to position her that way. But then also like Rogue is an X-Men, but also like they didn't execute Rogue very well in like the Fox films. And so I love how like we're kind of like just starting off where like these mutants are powerful, and they're like very extreme. And I want all of our mutants to be very powerful and extreme. Like I do not want them to hold back. Like please power set these people at the top level. Like please, like put the Avengers to shame. Like that's what I really want to occur with the X-Men films and the X-Men characters in the MCU going forward. The way Jean controls people telepathically so confidently, that was stellar in my opinion. I, as a kid, was obsessed with telepathy. Whenever you're a young boy or like a girl, you know, or whoever, you know, when you're a kid and the conversation in class or on the playground or wherever comes up, like what superpower would you have if you could have a superpower? Obviously, most boys would be like super speed. Like most boys would just go to super speed. I want super speed because they want to be like Flash. They want to be like Dash and things like that. I would always be like, I want telepathy because I always felt like the power of the mind was the most intriguing power possible. And so seeing how she utilizes her telepathy in this film so easily and so like sarcastically and like with personality and like also like with like ruthlessly was just very exhilarating in my opinion, or not even in my opinion, like for me. Like I was in the seat like just going crazy, and then my little cousin was in the seat next to me like being like, oh no. And so when Jean's going like person to person, like how aggressive Jean plops from people to people is very interesting, and I hope that like they harp on that in the future X-Men films. I hope in the future X-Men films, when Jean goes from person to person, it doesn't have to be a jolt. It doesn't have to be a jolt. I hope that like it's like just her just jumping from brain to brain, and I hope that like I hope we kind of like see like Xavier be able to do that without like the jolting and stuff like that, just so the magnitude of his control over his powers, and then like Jean learn how to do that. Like I'm just so excited for what we can learn, or like what we can like experience with Jean going forward when it comes to like the X-Men and the MCU, in my opinion. Especially given that like Jean is controlling Bruce Banner and the Hulk in this film, and honestly doing it kind of effortlessly until like the true Hulk comes out, right? But then also like she's controlling like Punisher, who like has a crazy brain, and obviously like she makes that joke like, whoa, this guy, he has a lot of stuff going on. But that shows her power too. Like she can literally step into your brain and like it doesn't affect her. Like it really doesn't affect her. I know that she was like affected with the Hulk, but she was only affected with the Hulk because Peter was like beating the hell out of like Bruce Banner. But if Peter wasn't there, she would have like definitely just controlled him until she like was done with him. So Jean is that girl. Like I fear Jean is really that girl. Also like 10-kilometer radius, I believe they said, was like the like, you know, the distance of her like mental break, I want to say, or mental ascension, let's just say that, or outburst. And that's a lot. That's like a whole bureau. That's like a whole borough of New York City. And so she's extremely powerful, and we already know there's just more to come from that. Even like when she's holding the shards of glass at Chanel Tillman's character, even though I know like that's like kind of like the stereotypical like thing to do with telepaths in films, is like to hold like sharp objects in people's face and just like show like they have all this control and stuff like that. But no, I love that because like that was like the first time we saw her telekinesis in the film outside of like her crushing the inhibitor, which is great. And also it looks really good. All the telepathy, all the telekinesis in this film looks really good. Bravo, because the MCU has been very botchy with their CGI lately, or just like, you know, Hollywood in general. And this really didn't do CGI like a disservice in any way. I would say like the only thing about this film that like the CGI was wonky was sometimes the swinging. I think sometimes the swinging, it wasn't the swinging motions. I feel like Tom Holland was doing very well at the stunts, but more so it was like the CGI city behind him. Like they needed to make that a little bit more realistic. I don't know how Sam Raimi, like even today when you go back and watch like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, like, or even the Andrew Garfield films, like they made swinging look so good. And for some reason, like that's the Tom Holland Spider-Man film franchise's like only fault. Like it can't make swinging look that good. And I think Homecoming like kind of was the closest, but I think it's because like the CGI of the MCU back in 2017, like pre-Infinity War, pre-Endgame was like spotless. Like it was spot on. Like it was effortless. It was so good. Like they used to just gag us. They used to gag us. Why can't we be gagged anymore? But I was gagged with Brand New Day, and I was gagged with Jean Grey. So you see what I'm saying? That's why I love Brand New Day, y'all. I'm sorry. But I think like the most important quality to Jean Grey here is Sadie Sink. I think Sadie Sink was cast properly as Jean Grey. I was compelled by her performance. I know there's a lot of people who weren't really high on Sadie Sink's performance. In my opinion, those are people who are still riding like their hate for Stranger Things. I don't think Sadie Sink like failed the film in any way with her performance here. I think she actually gave a very apt emotional performance. When we see her realize what VMAX stand for, when she looked up at the vent and realized like this was her sister's experience, but her sister did not make it out of this, like that hit for me. It hit for me when she had all those moments with Peter. Yeah, I love Sadie Sink in this film, so I don't know what people are talking about when they have criticisms of her in this film. She's gonna be around for a long time now, so you might as well just get with the program because this is the queen is here to stay. Speaking of emotional performances, I think my last like biggest takeaway from this film is that this film, Spider-Man Brand New Day, is the highest like executed emotionality of the Tom Holland Spider-Man films, in my opinion. And I just want to run through that because I think like the biggest key attribute to the emotionality of this film being so high, in my opinion, is Peter Parker, is Tom Holland's performance. I think this is the best Tom Holland performance of all of the Spider-Man films, and I think this is the best execution and portrayal of the character of Peter Parker of all the Tom Holland Spider-Man films. And so let's just run through all the dynamics that Peter Parker in this film is going through, because I think that's the best way to just talk about all the emotionality, right? So first up, we have Peter and Jean, and both Peter and Jean in this film, I feel like they're just like emotionally connecting in regards to like both of them have chosen this route of isolation, and it's like kind of like isolation not in their control. Like Peter had to like do away with the identity of Spider-Man, and like Jean had to like she had no choice in her sister abandoning her because her sister forced her to give up. And so now they're like on this course of like not being themselves anymore. They're like Jean is not Jean Grey. She's like this entity of like retribution and revenge. And then like Peter isn't Peter. He is just Spider-Man. And so they're both dealing with this like I don't want to say imposter syndrome, but this like, abandonment of who they are. Who are they? And I think that's like so great to see, especially when it comes to the culmination of, the Aunt May, I don't want to say dream sequence, but the memory in Peter's head that Jean enters. Now, I love that because like she tries to enter his head 3 times in the film. And so like when she first tries to enter his head, she sees that memory starting, but then Peter pushes her out. And then she knows she can kind of get into Peter's head, I believe, like in the center of the film when she keeps being like, oh, you can't see me. Like I know she knows that she feels that she can get into his head, but she doesn't really try because that's when she like tries to go like even darker with her manipulation on him. She's like, I don't even have to go in your head. I can like manipulate you with the people around you. And then when we get to the third act of the film, and she actually sits there with Aunt May, and that whole emotional like back and forth like conversation there, she like inserts herself into Peter's experience. I thought that was great. That really touched me. It really did. And then we can just go ahead and move on to Peter and MJ, who I think Zendaya as MJ in this film is like the crux of the emotionality, but really it's like the Peter and MJ dynamic, and it's probably like the best or like the crux of the emotionality in this film because Tom Holland and Zendaya are married, and like they've actually like nailed the romanticism between MJ and Peter. I feel like it was very like awkward and quirky, which was on purpose prior to this, but now it's like very like purely like adult romantic, and obviously like they're adults now, they're 30-year-olds now, so they are very in like a different stage as well. They're not as like kiddish, I would say, even though I don't feel like you should be kiddish at like 26, but who knows? And so like you have MJ coming back and moving back into the city, right? And so that sets up the plot for Peter and MJ to rekindle. And then you have Peter being in their housewarming and seeing MJ kiss her boyfriend. And that's already like, whoa. And that sparks this whole like arachnid puberty that occurs in this film. And then you have like Peter going to ask MJ to come with him so he can protect her. And she's like, okay. Love that. That was very cute and quick. But then you have the best sequence, or my favorite sequence, I would say, of the emotionality in this film, where Peter goes to the rooftop of his rooftop, and he's like telling her like, I want to keep you safe. Somebody's after you. And she's like, who's after me? Who's after me? And then she's like, oh, wait, I know you. How do I know you from somewhere? Please tell me. You're lying to me. Please tell me. And then like he's like, he confesses to her and all this stuff, and she's like, please, like, are you somebody I know? And then like, ooh, this was so good. People aren't talking about this enough, but when MJ like rolls up Peter's mask, and you have just his lips, it's like an inverse of like the Tobey Maguire, Kristen Dunst like kiss, and like that was buzzy to me. Like that was a really, really buzzy to me. But then that whole sequence where like Peter like confesses all this stuff, and like MJ is like, Peter, like you're Peter, and all this stuff. He's like, oh my gosh, MJ, you got me back, and he's like crying, and he's like consoling her, and then Jean's like, or not Jean, but like MJ's like, but Jean's inside of her, and she's like, go ahead, hold her, Peter. Like go ahead, get what you need to get. You see what I'm giving you? Like, I'm controlling her. Like, you see how ahead of the game I am? Like, you're not controlling shit. And, ooh, that was so good because then, like, that subtle pushback that Tom Holland does from Zendaya in that film, I mean, not in that film, in that scene, it's so potent. It's so potent. That's the only word I have for it. It's so potent with emotionality. And then you have like Zendaya doing this like very like mischievous like performance where she's like doing that slow creep backwards, and she's like, like and then like the whole like Peter and his arachnid hormones take over, and he like almost hurts not Zendaya, MJ on that roof. Like when he grabs her, like he like really grabs her because obviously knows Jean's inside of her, and then she pushes herself off, and then we have that like Peter jumps off to catch MJ because Jean jumps out of MJ, but then it's also a callback to Andrew Garfield Spider-Man with Gwen, but then also Andrew Garfield Spider-Man with MJ in No Way Home, which I thought was a good callback. And then he saves her, but then Peter's like, no, please stop hurting her, which I thought was great as well. That pulled my heartstrings. I honestly pulled my heartstrings because I know a lot of people are saying that if that scene was not a twist, and MJ actually did remember, they would have felt like it was bad writing. But in my opinion, I was in the theater like, oh, we're getting way more story in this film if MJ already like remembers Peter. But then the twist was actually better. So I will agree with those people that like the twist is a better storyline than like actually just giving us the reconciliation between both of them. And then like, we get the Jean introduction, we get the Jean face in this scene, and then like Peter finally sees who Jean is, and this like it sets up that scene is so great because it sets up all the emotionality. It bursts the emotionality into the audience, right? Into the story. bursts it out, and then it sets up like all these other like pieces to the story. Like you can see I love this film. Like you see I love this film, right? And then we go on to have these scenes where you have MJ and the inhibitor and how she touches Peter's face, but all the chemistry they have in regards to that scene. And then you have MJ in the letter after Peter comes back, and then where she's telling him like, I don't love you, I'm not that girl, X, Y, and Z. And then you have the swing. Ooh, the swing was so good. And then we have when they get back to MJ and Ned's crib, and she's like, do you want to come up and say hi to Ned? Because one, she knows Ned wants to see Spider-Man, but two, she knows that Peter wants to see Ned. And it's like, that's what I'm talking about earlier, where it's like, she's choosing to have this community. She's choosing to have Peter in her life still. And it's just like this very interesting thing where like, kind of like that life lesson that I told you, like Peter is having to come to the end of, but MJ's having to begin. MJ's having to learn who her community is and what her community actually is going to be in life. And it's going to be Peter. We know that it's going to be Peter, and we know that for sure it's going to be Ned. And I just love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. And then you have like everything else that occurs, right? And then you have like the painting when MJ does the painting, or not the painting, the drawing, I should say. When she does a drawing of Ned and Peter, or Spider-Man, I should say. And then even like when you have that drawing show up in the hospital scene, so good. And then you end off with MJ in this film on the rooftop where she's holding the necklace that Peter got her in Far From Home. And she's just like thinking. And it's just like, ooh, I can't wait to the next film, y'all. I can't wait to the next film. But let's move on. And then you have Peter and Ned, right? So then you have Peter and Ned, and you have all of Ned's TikToks, and you have Ned at the bodega. I love the bodega scenes with Ned, but I definitely love like the ending scene at the bodega, which we end off with Peter, which I think like, obviously there's all these other moments of like emotionality between Peter and Ned in this film. You have like the tracker scenes, like when Peter and Ned are actually talking, but it's not Peter and Ned, it's Spider-Man and Ned who are talking. And then like you have like that whole sequence where like I just said, where MJ drew Ned and Spider-Man, but also like where like Peter and Ned are connecting on a nerd basis, like they're doing this D&D Lord of the Rings like references, and it's so cool. And then like at the end of the film they have the handshake sequence, and when they do the handshake sequence and then he looks at him and he's like, Peter. Now, biggest question of the film, honestly, in my opinion, is did Ned remember that it's Peter Parker, who Peter Parker is completely? Or did he just connect the dots that MJ said that Spider-Man's name was Peter, and now Peter is in front of him trying to be friends, and he's like, oh, you're Spider-Man. But also people are saying that like, no, Ned actually remembers that that's Peter Parker, because why would the handshake click for him if that was just like Peter, if he just thought that was just like Peter who's Spider-Man? Like, why would that click for him, right? Like, what would be the significance of the handshake there? Which, I don't know, but I agree with that. I would love for it to be that Ned remembers who Peter is, and then we can get into that storyline, and maybe we could find a way for MJ to remember who Peter is, or maybe we don't find a way for MJ to remember who Peter is, and then that's what the storyline for the next film is. Juicy stuff. And then you have all of like the adult mentorship relationships that Peter has in this film that contribute to the emotionality of the film, right? So you have like Frank Castle, right? Punisher. Love it. I love it. I am fond of John Bernthal as the Punisher. Now, I know that I just did say in the Odyssey video that I'm like, is John Bernthal doing a shtick? But I love the shtick when it comes to the Punisher. I think that John Bernthal was born to play the Punisher. I'm sorry, I do. And I love all the stuff that goes on here between Peter and the Punisher. I love the lone wolf nature that they both have. I love the Staten Island joke. I love how, you know, MJ gets taken in by Frank in this film, kind of. And then I love like the whole, shooting Peter sequence and like him crying on the hospital bed and doing like the whole like Spider-Man in the window sequence. Like, lovely. I loved it all. Everything with Spider-Man and Punisher in this film was great, in my opinion. And then you have Peter and Bruce Banner in this film, or Spider-Man and Hulk in this film, right? We finally got Spider-Man and Hulk in a film together. I mean, obviously they both were in Infinity War together, but like we finally got them like in a scene together, like really like interacting with each other. And then Bruce Banner and Peter Parker is just such a heartwarming sequence, because like this used to be somebody he looked up to, and somebody who knew him, and somebody who like I'm pretty sure gave him advice and pointers and all of those things. And also you could kind of tell that Bruce Banner kind of understands like this person is like more than what we see. I feel like Bruce Banner kind of knew that this kind of might be Spider-Man. Like I do feel like that, but I feel like the film kind of fails Bruce Banner or like Mark Ruffalo or Hulk in this film. Like story-wise, but like I know there's a lot going on, so they kind of had to just show him out. And I know there's a lot of like licensing stuff going on with Hulk, and so like we can't have too much Hulk and all of that stuff that happens. It didn't land properly, but it did, start running on the ground, and it did fly and take off properly. And I think that scene where Spider-Man is like, where Hulk is about to choke out Spider-Man and really like end him, but then like he gets, pulled back, but then also like he lets go of the rock. Oof. So good. I will say the only failed emotionality of this film is the dynamic between Peter Parker and like the detective. I don't even know the detective's name, played by Liza. Like I don't really understand what that was supposed to, I get what that was supposed to do, but it really didn't hit. I know it's supposed to be kind of like an insert for Happy Hogan, like character, like Jon Favreau's character in the Spider-Man films of the MCU, but it just didn't hit. And so, but like, love Liza, more power to Liza. But for me, I think that was like the most failed part of the film, in my opinion. But as I said, Tom Holland as Peter Parker in this film overall is like the centerpiece of the emotionality in the film. And I think that's why the film works so well when it comes to the emotionality. And I think that's why it hit me so deeply. Both times that I watched the film, I walked away very satisfied. I walked away feeling very full. And I'm going to watch this film again the second it hits streaming. So I just want to give like claps out to Tom Holland, because I know that everybody we shit on Tom Holland a lot when it comes to his acting, but I feel like in this, when it comes to Spider-Man, like Tom Holland is always on point. He was made to do Spider-Man. He really was. Now, other things, who knows? But Spider-Man, definitely. And if I wanted to throw in like another major takeaway, it's just that like I walked away from this film feeling great about it. And I haven't really done that since Homecoming. I walked away from Homecoming feeling like amazing, y'all. I walked away from Far From Home feeling okay. And then I walked away from No Way Home feeling like, not really looking forward to the next one. But this one, I'm like, oh, I'm looking forward to the next one. Like, I'll be front row and center for the next one. Like, I'll do anything to see the next film. Like, if we could get that in front of me, I'll do anything to get that in front of me tomorrow. So that's like my main takeaway of this film, is that it just really, really reinvigorated my love for Spider-Man and my love for the MCU in a lot of ways. And I think that is great. I think that we need more positive rapport for the MCU, especially when the X-Men are coming down the pipeline, and then we have to like deal with Doomsday and deal with Secret Wars and all of this like boom, boom, pow, pow, which, I don't like. What are my main points of contention with this film? I don't have any. I literally don't have any notes for this film. Like I literally don't. And like, I can make notes. Like, I feel like I can make notes out of anything, and I really can't make notes. The only notes, like I said, I had is like, I feel like the Peter Parker detective relationship wasn't successful at all. Like, we could have did better there. When it comes to technical thoughts, I think the technicality of this film was perfectly fine. I don't really have any notes in that regard. Score and sound, don't really have any notes or thoughts on that either. My overall rating on this film, I think this film is great. Like, I really do. I really rate this film highly. I would give this film 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. Like, honestly, 8 out of 10, 4 out of 5. It's solid. Even more on a great day, 9 out of 10, 4.5 out of 5. Honestly, I'll tell anybody to go watch this film. Go watch this film. Go watch this film. If you haven't seen this film, why are you watching this? But go watch it, or go rewatch it right now. So yes, that concludes my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day, but that doesn't conclude the video yet. Let's go ahead and get into the fit segment of today and talk about a few things in the film industry. Okay, so first up for the fit segment, a new Black Panther was announced, y'all. David Johnson, my guy, is the new Black Panther. Now, why is David Johnson my guy? Because I am an OG industry watcher. Industry on HBO. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. I remember during 2020 when Industry first released, I was there the release night. I was like, I want to watch this, and it captivated me. And David Johnson stars in the first 2 seasons of the show, and he's great. And I think you should go watch that show so you can see how great he is. But I think he's also, he's just a very promising actor. He hasn't done anything that's just monumental when it comes to his performances. I know that a lot of people who love The Long Walk will be like, The Long Walk is a great film. David Johnson's doing great. He's not doing great in that film. That film sucks. As you can see by my video from my least favorite films of 2025, The Long Walk is bad. Everybody who thinks The Long Walk is good to great are under spells. So no. But back to what I was saying, David Johnson, great. He's a new Black Panther. I actually love this. I'm very excited to see what happens with the character of young T'Challa, new T'Challa, T'Challa Jr. in Black Panther 3. Obviously, like I saw like at Comic-Con, Ryan Coogler's like, presentation for it. I watched the video for that. And so very glad to see that Letitia is coming back. Very glad to see that Winston's coming back. Very glad to see like everybody in the Black Panther universe is coming back for this, so then we could uplift like the new Black Panther, and like just very glad to see like what comes of Black Panther in the MCU this decade, especially given that like we're moving away from like the Avengers storytelling and we're going towards the X-Men storytelling. So we know that Storm's coming too, and like are they going to use Black Panther 3 to introduce Storm? Who knows? But I am seated for it nevertheless. The next thing I want to come and talk about is Jharrel Jerome just got cast in Task Season 2. Now I know this isn't film, and I know Jharrel Jerome hasn't been in film really. It's TV talk, but like I'm just very excited for Jharrel Jerome to be back on screen, and I hope that Jharrel Jerome does get in film. Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Yeah, Jharrel Jerome was in Moonlight. Like, okay, yeah, so it's like it's film adjacent. Like we're kind of film adjacent, but like Jharrel Jerome is back on our screens, y'all. Now, Jharrel Jerome has been like quiet and gone out of like the public for a few years, and so I'm glad that he's back, and I hope that this is kind of like his like back door back into the industry, and I hope that we get him into some more major films. So fingers crossed for Jharrel Jerome's reappearance on our screens. And the last thing I want to kind of like touch on in today's video is everything that's going on with like Children of Blood and Bone and like that film adaptation. I know that that adaptation is being, spearheaded by the team that did The Woman King. I love The Woman King. I think The Woman King was a great film. I was there premiere night and I had a great time. I think I saw The Woman King like 3 times that year actually. And I know that same exact team is behind Children of Blood and Bone adaptation as well. Now, if you don't know, the author behind Children of Blood and Bone, who was a part of the creation process and like the casting process and like the producing process of this film, has come out and said like basically she is no longer a part of this film and like she's had like the worst experience of her life when it comes to this film. All I want to say on that is that like I think we should all just like leave her alone. Like I think we should just leave her alone. I know that she's not saying a lot, but she is saying stuff because like even though she's not saying details of why she had like the worst experience ever of the film, and she's not even saying like don't go see this film, she's still going and saying like I had the worst experience of my life with this film. So it's like you're still disparaging the film in some way, but at the same time like I want everybody to like go see the film first. Like I know this sounds crazy, right? Like go see the film, even though she's saying like it caused her immense pain, and let's see like what actually occurred, because I'm truly trying to understand like what's going on here. I really don't know. I really don't know if this person was wronged and the film is bad and the film is nothing like the book and that like will be vindicated, I guess, in the future, or if she won't be vindicated and the film is actually good and she actually was taken off the film, or she left the film on her own volition, or like because like she was doing something that she wasn't supposed to be doing, or acting a certain way, or like just acting up on set. Who knows? I don't know. But all I do know is that I do like the trailer, and that's why I wanted to talk about it. I do like the trailer for Children of Blood and Bone. I love Tuso Mbedu, like love her. She's in Task as well, speaking of Jharrel Jerome in Task. And then also she was the star of the Underground Railroad, speaking of Jharrel Jerome, who was in Moonlight, made by Barry Jenkins, and Tuso Mbedu was in the Underground Railroad, Barry Jenkins' adaptation series, which is amazing. You should go watch the Underground Railroad by Barry Jenkins. You should go watch everything made by Barry Jenkins outside of The Lion King. So yes, I'm in support of all that. Obviously, Damson Idris is in it, Viola Davis is in it, Regina King is in it. You have Arya Starr is in it. You have Cynthia Erivo's in it. Like all of these black actors are in it. So I'm definitely gonna watch Children of Blood and Bone, and I just hope that like the author of the book is okay. Like that's my thoughts on that. So yes, this is the conclusion of this video. Those are my thoughts on Spider-Man Brand New Day. I hope that y'all felt just as good about Spider-Man Brand New Day as I did. I kind of might go see Spider-Man Brand New Day a third time, honestly. If I have nothing to do this weekend, like I'm kind of pissed because I thought that Tony, the Anthony Bourdain biopic, was coming out this week. But then like the tickets released today and they're not available, and like no showtimes are available till August 20th. What is up with that? Like, I hate when that happens. Like, don't say something's releasing this week and it's only releasing this week in LA and New York, and then like everybody else in the country has to wait 2 weeks. Like, that pisses me off. That's a big tangent, but as I always say, I'm just a wannabe cinephile. and these are my thoughts. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.